Welcome to today's episode of the Dog Training Dogma with your host, Jonathan Katz. As always, in the studio is Hood Rat Heather. Welcome, Heather.
Hello.
Today's episode is part 2 of my Ode to My Mentor video series. I want to give us a challenge for my episode 15, the Ode to Waleed. I watched it. Heather and I sat in the living room and watched it, and I think I said the word. What was the word? I used the word communication like 800 times.
Yeah.
So if you want to go through and you want to count, and you can tell me exactly how many times I used the word communication, there was a lot of communication. You'll win a prize because it's a lot.
That's exciting.
Repetition
it is
key,
a lot.
right? It is a lot. I said it a lot. Part 2. So as I said, I'm going to go through, and I wanted to dedicate an episode to each one of the people that helped formulate the way that I communicate with dogs. And today's episode is Johnston. I decoyed in a club for 6 months straight, and I sucked. I never got any better. They showed me basic explanation, basic showing me how to catch a dog, and basically just threw me in the suit and started throwing dogs on me. I was jamming dogs, and they would just yell at me for jamming dogs. And I go, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, if you ever feel like you're in the bite suit and it's like the movie Joe Dirt, where he's got the canister on the back. He thinks it's a bomb, and he's like threatening to, he's got the canister, and then he hits it with a hammer, and it was just an old septic tank, and it's just poop going on his head. And he's just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to stop this. Sometimes, like when you're put in these stressful situations as a trainer and you don't know how to handle them, you don't know what to do. It's like that's how I feel that, those experiences happen. Like, I wasn't being taught. I wasn't progressing. And that's what really bothered me the most, was zero progression. In 6 months, zero progression. I don't like problems. I like solutions. How am I going to solve this problem? I want to get good at decoying. I need to find someone to mentor me on how to be a good decoy. I went and I scoured the internet. And, we didn't have social media at the time. We had forums and things like that. But I basically just went on Google, and I was just searching for people that offered decoy schools, that offered decoy training, not just, a lesson here or there, or come train with our club. Like, no. I want very detailed, explain to me how to do this, and then show me how to do this, and then coach me through doing it. And so in my searches, I found a gentleman named Johnston. He was the director of decoys for French Ring in the early 2000s, an extremely accomplished French Ring decoy. But at the time, I really had no desire to do French Ring. I was a PSA guy, and I trained protection dogs and police dogs. But that's what John did on a daily basis. He trained protection dogs and police dogs. And so I said, this guy has a shit ton of experience, and I want to go and I want to learn from him. And so I messaged him. I called him. And he told me, yep, come on down. I signed up to spend 2 weeks with him. I was still doing my apprenticeship at the time. I had next to no money. I saved up for this. I couldn't afford a hotel for 2 weeks. He let me stay in the, the back room. He had a bunk bed, for like decoys visiting, or, gets late at training or whatever. But, and I stayed in basically like a back closet on a bunk bed for 2 weeks. I eat, breathed, and slept decoy work for 2 weeks straight. And it was just me. You know, he had his other apprentice that was there, but, you know, he was also having his apprentice help teach me and handle dogs for me to learn. You know, like at the school, I'm running a decoy course. You know, we just did a decoy immersion, and, you know, we have 7 or 8 decoys. Like, I need 15 dogs to be able to run through and do reps with each one of them. You know, he had multiple dogs. He had 2 of his own personal dogs, and it was just me. And those dogs like to work, and those dogs bit everywhere all the time. You know, they were French ring dogs, but also protection dogs, also police demo dogs. Like, you know, these dogs had no issues taking any part of your body and then staying there. You know, those dogs really taught me to be honest as a decoy. Like, where are your limbs? Because wherever you put your limbs, they are going to bite you, you know? So I signed up for this course, and I go and I had asked my boss at the time for 2 weeks off. You know, he reluctantly gave it to me because I was going to continue to learn. He said, well, where are you going? And I told them I'm going to learn from Johnston. And the whole club started laughing at me. And I'm like, why are you guys laughing at me? And they go, you know, he's like a drill sergeant, right? You know, he's like an MMA fighter, like big, very big, tough, you know? And I go, you know, I want to learn, and he's the best person that I can find to teach me. And he said he's willing to teach me, so I'm going to go. I'm not going to let you guys discourage me because you believe that I can't take the pressure of what, you know, what you perceive the pressure that I'm going to have to take. Did they get in my head a little bit? Yeah, obviously I started thinking about it. You know, I understood what I was signing up for was going to be difficult, but in their conversation, in their talks, you know, I understood it was going to be more difficult than I originally signed up for. But nonetheless, you're not going to tell me what I can and can't do. My entire life, people have told me what I can't do. I know what I am capable of. I'm a big fat dude. I still know that I am capable of doing what I need to do. You know, John had me doing suicides in the suit with no dogs. Like, this had nothing to do with decoy work. It had everything to do with decoy work. It had to do with my athleticism. It had to do with me being able to breathe and move and think on the fly. One of his techniques that was an amazing technique that I use all the time to train decoys to help them like actually process and think while getting bit is he would make me do basic math, basic arithmetic while getting bit by a dog. So catch a dog, and then as you're working the dog, what's 1 + 1? What's 2 + 2? What's 2 × 2? What's 3 × 3? What's 4 + 4? And they're very simple problems, but nonetheless, it makes you go, and start thinking about it, which is teaching you to multitask, because you still have to work the dog. If you start thinking about it and then you stop working the dog, you're not doing it right. So it's work the dog while still doing math problems. For 2 weeks straight, I cried myself to sleep because my entire body hurt. I was loving every second of it. I was enjoying my time so much, and I truly cherish that time that I got to spend with John. Think about how much 2 weeks can like change the way that you feel about dogs. That's why I set up the Dogma Academy as like, you can just come for a week. You can come for 2 weeks. I don't need you for 2 months. If I have you for 2 months, great. If I have you 3 months, 9 months, 2 years, awesome. But how much can I affect in 2 weeks? I learned so much in 2 weeks. I felt comfortable after 2 weeks actually being in the suit. I still had so much to learn. I still had so much growth that I needed to, you know, experience. I still had years and years that was going to make me the decoy that I am today. But nonetheless, those 2 weeks really changed my life. Made me for my final test, because Johnston was basically at the time the head decoy for Troy Casey, who's the head of Boston PD. You know, very shout out to Troy, like very intelligent police dog trainer to hire the best most experienced, talented civilian decoy that you can find in the area to build these dogs, right? As a civilian, when I train police dogs, I don't need to know how to be a police officer. I need to know how to train dogs. I'm not going to tell you how to be a police officer, but I am going to help make your dog as best as they possibly can be. I had to work, however many, 20 police dogs, and he made me walk up 3 flights of steps because they had to do a full building search, hide in a, hot, dark room until the dogs went and found me, then transport me all the way down to the end. And then he goes, okay, run right back up. So, 15 or 20 dogs, 3 flights of steps each one. Like, he really put me through the test, but I came out successful. Like, the power of positivity and your willingness to want to succeed and do well at something, and your fight to want to do well. Like, if you have that fight, if you have that dog in you, you can't tell me to stop. Was it hard? Yes. It was one of the hardest things I've done in my entire life. And I've done a lot of hard shit. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done, but nonetheless, I came out successful and got exactly what I was looking for out of it, which was to feel comfortable in front of the dog, to feel comfortable in the suit so that I could then learn and grow. When I was done, after I had worked all those police dogs, John's like, I want to take you out to dinner. And he took me out for dinner. And he goes, I just want you to know that if you ever want to come back and train with me, you're always welcome. I don't want any more money from you. I just want you to come and train. And I was like, thank you so much. I'm really honored, but why? And he goes, you never told me no. And I said, my immediate sarcastic reaction was, I could have said no, right? He chuckled, but he goes, dude, I've had guys show up in, 10 times better shape than you and tell me no, I'm not doing that. You never said no. All of the crazy shit that I made you do, you never said no, you did it. Your willingness in life to want to succeed, like, that's on you. The power of negative thought can literally kill you. The power of positive thought can literally make you alive. So my willingness to want to succeed, I'm just going to find the best person that I can possibly do to help teach me. He didn't go easy on me because protection work is not easy work. It's difficult work. The amount of times that I made a mistake and he was able to coach me through it and I didn't make that mistake again. I was working as Dog Turbo one day. I had bought a suit, my first bite suit, and it was a transformer suit. And it had it can switch from training weight to trial weight. And so the pants had extra pants that Velcroed on top of it. Well, I could not run in those pants. I'm too big. You're not running. You're waddling at that point with all that extra material. And I was getting frustrated because I can't get up off the ground. I can't move. So I took them off, and you basically work in comp pants. And his dog Turbo bit me in the upper thigh. And he said I turned bright white, and I just remember freezing. And he looks at me, he goes, are you wearing a cup? And I went, And he goes in, he chokes the dog off, and he makes a big deal about take that suit off and go to Sports Authority, wherever you're going to go, and buy a cup, and don't ever get in a suit ever again without a cup on. That positive punishment experience, the dog almost biting me. Thank God it wasn't worse. It was close to worse, but it couldn't have been worse. One of the things that got me through it that I learned was him telling me the story of the time that he got bit in the private part, and that it swelled and it needed to be drained. And this entire experience he's explaining to me, I go, I never want to experience this. So I'm now going to wear a cup from now on. So young decoys, piece of advice, wear a cup. if you care about your appendages, if you care about your body parts, wear protection. They're like, I have literally seen decoys get bit in the crotch by leg dogs and keel over in screaming pain. You're in the bite suit. That should not happen. The dog should be able to bite you anywhere on the suit other than face, hands, or feet. No face, hands, or feet, but anywhere on the suit you should be able to take a bite. Sometimes leg dogs are going to go for the crotch. It's a perfect bite bar. It's a perfect target. It's literally right there, easy to bite. It's not ideal for sends because that's making the dog come center mass, which is hard to catch and potentially compressing the dog's spine. But the dog's right there. Send the dog to guard. Tell the dog to bite. Yep. Nope. So, little piece of advice, always wear a cup. Protect yourself. If you feel like a gauntlet is going to help you work the dog better because you're not in an extreme amount of pain, right? I had one of my decoys, he bought a suit and he wanted a suit like my suit, which was basically a comp suit with semi-comp arms. And we were working leg dogs. And so because of my pants were comp pants, when I would train, I would use pony wraps and I'd wrap up my legs so that I could actually work grips. And I'm like, dude, he's trying to work the grips. And he's like, he's working Heather's dog Bandit. And he's like, and I'm like, dude, you're okay? And he goes, yeah, it's fine. And I'm like, no, it's not fine. You're clearly in a lot of pain. We need to pad up that leg. We need to have something like you need to be able to take working the grip. It's not about your grit of being able to just take the pain of the bite. It's you need to be able to work the dog and work the grip, and the dog's got to be able to feel you, but it shouldn't be so painful that you got to allow the dog to counter in. If the dog is just grabbing material, then they're not actually biting man. They're not actually biting person, So I was able to, in 2 weeks, go back to club, put on the suit, and feel comfortable in the suit. I still wasn't good. I still had a shit ton to learn, but I felt comfortable putting that suit on. It wasn't like the first time you put like a tuxedo on, you're like, I feel awkward. And then eventually you put the tuxedo on, you're like, I feel like James Bond, right? It's, you're putting your suit. Every decoy, when they get their brand new bite suit, they have to do their awkward, like, first day of school picture. Everyone makes them stand there and take that picture. I didn't feel that awkward. Now, John taught me how to target a dog on the bicep with using the jacket as a sleeve, flipping the jacket backwards and using it as a sleeve so that you can slip it. Because if the jacket's backwards, if the jacket is, you'll see me sometimes, I'll throw the jacket on and I'll just put it on one arm, and I have to hold it there because otherwise it's just going to slide down. So I have to use my right hand to hold it there, but I'll use it and then I can slip it. If it's fully on, for me to slip it, I have to take one arm out, take another arm out, shimmy, Jimmy out the way back. How many seconds does that take? It takes more than 1.3 seconds. If it takes more than 1.3 seconds, then I don't like it. If I'm trying to slip and let the dog win. Again, if it's terminal at the end of a session and you're slipping the jacket, that's a whole reward experience. That's not a big deal. I'm talking about like pressure off, and the pressure off has to be within 1.3 seconds. If less, awesome. If it's a half a second, even better, but nonetheless. So John taught me how to use the jacket backwards. Put both arms in, but facing forward like it was your smock in school when you brought your father's old t-shirt, right? And you wore it backwards, so you didn't get all your clothing all filled with paint. And so when I got back, I show up to club and they're like, oh yeah, big shot. Let's see you go work a dog. Target this dog on the bicep. And I was like, okay. So I go over, I take my jacket, I put my jacket on backwards. And they go, what the fuck are you doing? And I just go like this with my arms, and the jacket just falls off, and they go, oh. It's their initial reaction of, what the fuck are you doing? Clearly, I just went and learned something. How about this? Sit back and watch me do it, and if I fuck it up, then tell me I fucked it up. But to automatically like poo-poo me of what the fuck are you doing. None of these decoys held a candle to who John, you know, was at his least, fuck, at his best. I just went and learned from someone extremely experienced in what they do. How about this? Just sit back and watch what I do and see if I can do it properly or not. If I fuck it up, tell me I fucked it up. But to automatically tell me that I'm wrong, but then when seeing me, I didn't even explain it. I just showed it. And I just put my arms like this and the jacket fell off. They were like, oh. Basically, they were going, oh, that's smart. Again, this was like... understanding the timeline of episode 15 to now episode 17, right? Sean's episode in the middle, that doesn't fit into the timeline of these two episodes. Like meeting Waleed and then going and training with John, like these happened around the same time. This was all 2007, right? This was a very pivotal year. I was doing my apprenticeship, 2006, 2007. Being able to go and like take that level of immersion and spending all of this time just soaking up as much knowledge as you possibly can. When I wasn't decoying, he had to do paperwork. He was running a business, so he had to do something. He had a lesson, and it wasn't something I watched every one of his lessons. When he did pet obedience, I watched his lesson. It had nothing to do with bite work. I'm like, this guy's experienced. This guy has knowledge. I want to learn anything he's going to teach me. When he was doing other stuff, he'd have me sit there making clatter sticks. It was like wax on, wax off, wax on, like, mop the fence. Like I literally sat there and there'd just be like, just piles of clatter sticks. Like people come in, they're like, what are you doing? I go, I don't know. I was told to make clatter sticks. When are you supposed to stop when he comes back? And I just, he let me take cigarette breaks, but I go and I just make clatter sticks until he was ready for me again. And from, sun up to sun down, I decoyed all day. I literally cried myself to sleep because the dogs bit everywhere. Every part of my body hurt. My left side hurt. My right side hurt. My upstairs hurt. My downstairs hurt. Like everything. So you're like, ow. I'm a side sleeper, right? So you're like, ow, ow. I do the rotisserie chicken. Ow, 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 ow. And then I just on my back. Okay, I'm just going to lay here. And just eventually from being so tired, I just pass out and you forget about the pain. If you're really training dogs to bite, you should be getting beat up a little bit in the suit. Again, it has to be enough pain where you can tolerate it. But nonetheless, like otherwise that dog's just biting material and they're not actually trying to bite people. Like you're not actually encouraging that dog to eventually bite flesh. John bridged the gap between sport dogs and police dogs. John bridged the gap between in Massachusetts. It's not like their gun laws it sucks. And a lot of people have protection dogs. And his bite nights, he'd have like 40, 50 people show up to do a bite night. You'd show up and there'd be Bloods on one side of the room and Crips on the other side of the room and Hell's Angels on the other side of the room. And they would all come in and they would all sit down. The leaders of all these groups would sit down and they would all have peace in his training room. The amount of respect that commands, again, I will forever be indebted to John for everything he taught me, allowing me to come back and work with him and come back and problem solve. And, it's forever, the way that I feel about defense, the way that I was taught how to read thresholds and, building puppies. I do use part of Waleed's Puppy Foundation program, but also a lot of John. If you watch me decoy, if you ever watch me in the suit, like that's John that did that. He really made me feel comfortable, like learning where that threshold was of how close can I get to that dog. It's because of John that I can touch a dog on the nose while that dog's in aggression and trying to bite me. Muzzle work. I thank John every day for teaching me how to do muzzle work. He used to travel the country giving police canine muzzle work seminars, you know. Up until the last few years, I would say there were very few trainers that were not police canine trainers that were teaching people how to properly do muzzle work. There was like a handful of guys, handful of trainers in the country that were actually teaching it. I would go around teaching it because John used to teach it, and I think it's my job to continue the knowledge of how to train it properly, because like everyone sending the dog to just hit a guy with a suit on, like that is not muzzle work. Do not do that. Like that is not what we're looking for. That's not how you create the foundation of it. A muzzle is there to test, will the dog engage with someone with absolutely no equipment on? It's the way that I can actually, for once, not have a suit on or not have a head and sleeve on. It's the only time it's not dangerous, because now I can roll around and fight with this dog because he's wearing a muzzle and he can't actually bite me. But I can still simulate that I'm getting bit. Ow, 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 ow. I did a muzzle attack with Bandit last night. Was it last night? 2 nights ago?
Last night.
Both of my knees hurt. My wrists hurt. My elbow hurt. And I'm like, why do all the parts of my body hurt? Because he just kept nailing me in every part of it.
He was having so much fun.
He was having so much fun. Dirty guards. He's normally clean in the garden. Dirty guards. He's like, oh, grandpa. I'm like, I can barely move, you know, but jump in when I have to. I thank John every day for teaching me how to do muzzle work properly, and also explaining to me, like, also how dangerous muzzle work is. Why, like, if I don't know you, I am doing a muzzle check on your dog, and I am going to come over and I am going to test it. And he's like, I don't care if handlers don't like that, then I'm not going to put myself in this situation. Decoys, like, protect yourself, because handlers will get you fucking bit. If I don't know you and I don't trust you, I am coming over and I am testing that muzzle. When Heather started learning about muzzle work, in the beginning, I showed her how to test the muzzle, and then I would have her then set it up, and then she would then have me come by and then test it to make sure it was okay. We did this for how long? Until you're like, got it. I understand. You understand the severity of how serious this is, that the dog will actually bite without that muzzle on. So if that muzzle pops off, like, we're fucked. And we can't correct the dog for biting at that point, because we've been training his entire life to put teeth on flesh, and it's the one time he gets to do it, and now he tells them that he's wrong? Bullshit. We don't need to test your muzzle anymore, because you understand how to do it properly. You have enough experience with it. But in the beginning, people think that they're putting it on properly, and they're not. So as a decoy, I am always going to go over and test it. I don't care if they don't like that, if they don't want me touching their dog. That's okay. That's fine. But if they want me to do unsuited muzzle work with their dog, they have to agree to my safety concerns. You know, we recently had someone come to bite night with a leather muzzle and a leather harness. And we've had this happen before. It will happen. And the harness popped. And so we explained, like, hey, you need to use better equipment. They came with a second harness, and the second one popped. And we're like, look, this is really at this point a safety issue. If it's a third time, we're all idiots, because what's the definition of insanity allowing this to happen? And instead of the handler being remorseful on that this is a safety issue, they lost their mind. How dare us talk to them that way? Like, dude, just, this is safety of your teaching dogs to bite. Why can't we just have a proper harness? This was like a single ply, 6-7 ounce leather that was
tracking
only,
harness. Like,
it was a tracking harness.
Yeah.
And that is a mistake that a lot of people make. They use leather tracking harnesses for agitation work. Now, it's a little baby puppy. It pops off the leash. The harness breaks. The leash pops. The puppy's just going to run to me and, maybe grab my, the puppy's not coming to try to kill me. But we're talking about, like, a big adult German Shepherd. Mm-hmm. Someone's getting bit. So safety is important. You know, again, John spent the time to explain to me that handlers will fuck you up. They will put you in situations where you will get injured. Don't get injured. Don't put yourself in those situations. He taught me how to use a whip, to stimulate the dog, but also how to use a whip to protect myself. Because if I'm standing out there and the only thing I have on me is a whip, that's my only protection. I thank him every day for teaching me how to properly train dogs to muzzle fight, because there's so much misinformation out there. And it really bothers me. I don't like the gatekeeping of dog training. I think that dog training should be public knowledge. And so I think it's important that everyone learns, but you have to learn how to do it properly. Don't just mimic someone because they have a lot of followers. Like, actually go to someone that actually has deployments, actually has trained dogs to do this in real life. Now, for doing this for sport, like for PSA 2, the dog's going to be sent on someone in a suit. There's no problem. Well, the dog's been biting a suit his entire life. All I got to do is put the muzzle on him and send him, and he's going to go and hit, pop the muzzle off, give him a bite. But that's just a trained sport behavior. That is not real life. That is not real world. Now, people that would say a PSA 3 dog wouldn't make a good police dog. It's just a sport dog. It literally has to demonstrate unsuited muzzle work. So it has to demonstrate that it will actively engage with someone that is unsuited. I would say that's the only sport that really demonstrates that. PSA is the only sport that, like, actively the dog has to show that it will fight with someone without equipment on. In Belgian ring, there's the muzzle on the object guard, but the dog just comes off, hits the dude, and then the dude goes away. Like, they're not actively fighting and staying in a fight when the guy's got a padded stick and he's actively fighting back and the dog gets no satisfaction other than the physical fight. That's a lot of stress. He made me watch videos of people, like, having their ribs cracked from just taking a straight shot to the stomach from a dog, a police dog running downfield in a muzzle. Watching those videos of those, like, epic fail. The guy had to be rushed to the hospital and couldn't be at work for months because he cracked you. And you heard in the video, crack, 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 crack. It sounded like you were breaking, like, I'll never forget that sound.
It's horrible.
So the amount of knowledge, the mentorship that he gave me, the encouragement that he gave me, John literally sent me a message, like, I want to say it was like 6 months ago, and it brought a tear to my eyes. He just messaged me and said, "Hey dude, like, I see what you're doing. I'm really proud of you." And I was like, man, that's, even though I have my own, sense of worth and accomplishment, but someone that you look up to, that has been someone that's helped teach you and get you to the point where you are, like, for them to acknowledge it. And John's not even in dogs anymore. John is an extremely successful MMA fighter. He has his own gym. He teaches a lot of very talented people. He teaches self-defense courses. He had a love for dogs, but I think the main love was working with people. And, the nice thing about a dojo is you can turn off the lights at night and leave. You don't have to take care of all the dogs. Dogs are stressful. He found his passion and he found his true calling. But, he spent years and years and years, from his early 20s into his 30s. I don't know exact how many years, but, building up a very successful business, being able to sell the business when he decided to move on with life. I always felt the nostalgia of, like, going to Steve Roberts of, and Steve then furthermore took what John did and built upon it and turned it even into something, greater. But every time I would come, and I always felt this sense of, like, this is where I feel like I got my start. This is one of the places when I'd step into that training room, it gave me all these happy, comforting feelings of, like, it felt like I was home, even though John wasn't there anymore. He had moved on to a different dojo, but nonetheless, like it was always like John was still there because I just hear him standing in the side, screaming at me, run faster, you didn't hit, right? So pressure makes diamonds. I'm not calling myself a diamond, but think about from that pressure, if you can thrive through that pressure. I mean, training dogs to bite, there's a lot of pressure involved with that. This is serious business. We're not playing Nerf. This isn't Nerf bites. This is real life. We're training police dogs. We're training personal protection dogs. I've trained a lot of dogs for survivors of assault. It is very important to me for people to have the dogs that will allow them to live their life comfortably because they feel a sense of protection. It's scary dog privilege. I'm a big dude and I still like my scary dog privilege. Growing up in New York City, getting jumped multiple times, having to carry a boot knife to go to middle school just so I can get back and forth on the train and not be attacked. When I moved back with my pit bull Snoopy, no one would make eye contact with me. They weren't scared of me. They were scared of my 85-pound pit bull walking down the block. And he was actually a certified therapy dog. I mean, he also was very good at biting, but he was a very social dog. He had a swagger to him. He walked down the street with confidence, but nonetheless, no one wants to mess with the dog. So scary dog privilege is real, right? We all love our scary dog privilege. Anytime Heather's ever said to me or one of the decoys, I don't think the dog would do this. And I'm like, oh yeah, let's go. And let's go meet you in a dark alley. And the dog's always proved to her. Yep. It was the fact that she had that doubt, I don't want to say bothered me, but I don't want you to have that doubt. I want you to know what that dog is capable of doing. Right. And then once we showed you, how'd you feel about that?
Oh, I felt great. Powerful.
We were doing muzzle work and we're like, grab Molly. And you're like, Molly won't do muzzle work. And we're like, shut up and hold my beer.
She does muzzle work.
Right. And she does great muzzle work. It's sometimes as handlers, we mistake the dogs that have a high social pack drive with dogs that won't protect us in real life. Think about in training, how often is your adrenaline pumping? Maybe your adrenaline's pumping. Is it pumping to the point where, you're actually in fear for your life? Never. So, we have to figure out how to simulate that. We have to figure out how to, John had called up all his old clients, all the people that had the Banger dogs that the dogs are trained. They bring them every so often for some bites. And they're like, I got this young kid, come in and bring them all down as all the band dogs and all the 110-pound German Shepherds. And there was one handler. She had a very small handler and very gigantic German Shepherd. And John's like, well, you're going to do some personal protection stuff with her. You're going to do handler attacks. I'm like, you're going to be neutral and then you're going to attack her. And I'm looking over, her husband's standing there. He's like a professional kickboxer, very sweet people, but he's like, you're going to attack this woman right now. I'm like, no, I'm not. He goes, yes, you are. And she goes, no, hit me. I really want. So the first time, I go and I went, And he's like, that was bullshit. Do it again. He's like, actually push her. I want there to be some sort of a sense of this is what can happen in real life. Someone might actually grab me, push me. And I went, oh, okay. And I pushed her and there was it was a weight pulling track, a carpet track up against the wall. And when I pushed her, she tripped and she toppled over.
Oh no.
And I felt so bad. And obviously the dog was on me. So I'm apologizing to her for falling. And I have this 100-something pound German Shepherd biting me, But they were like, oh, no, that was great. And I had this sense of anxiety of I don't want to hurt anyone. They're like, no. We have to try to create. So it's something that John taught me was even though we're in training and we know we're in training, we have to try to create this little bit of level of stress. The dog has to see, oh, my God, mommy got pushed. That was actually a push. So I understand why they made me do it. At the time, I was nervous about it, but I did it, right? he never set me up for failure. He never told me to do something that I wasn't capable of doing. He never put me somewhere where I got injured. If anything, he was always trying to save me from being injured. Think about the trickle-down effect of all of the knowledge that John instilled in me for me to then now have my own dog training school and pass that knowledge down. You know, like teaching my students where that threshold is of how close they can and can't get to that dog. You know, that was John. John's the one that taught me about aggression. He's the one that taught me how to bring the true aggression out of the dog, you know? Anytime I had a problem, I just call him and he'd always give me the answer. Every time I was struggling with something, you know, he was truly a mentor. He is truly a mentor, even not being in dogs anymore. Again, like sending me a message like, dude, I see what you're doing. You know, I'm proud of you. Like that is still mentoring. Like, I get emotional talking about things like this. I'm an emotional person, but the emotion of, you know, even to this day, still mentoring me. That positive reinforcement, like I feel the positive reinforcement of what I'm doing, people being encouraging, but then someone that I truly respect their opinion, you know, just out of the blue sending me a message to, you know, just tell me I'm doing a good job. You know, it truly meant a lot. And, you know, from the bottom of my heart, John, I can never repay you for all the knowledge that you instilled in me. You know, all of that, you know, yelling at me to make me better kept me safe. It kept me from like having a really bad bite. You know, I kept getting, like, I got bit in the hands a bunch of times at that first club that I was part of. And one day I got bit in the hand. The dog it was a pit bull in a guard. And I just like, when the dog outed, I just kind of kept my hands there. And the dog tagged me in the hand. Dog didn't latch onto my hand, you know, dog just tagged me. So I have holes in my hand. Dog broke skin. So I go to walk into the office to go get the first aid kit so I can like bandage myself up so I can continue decoying. And I go in the office and the boss looks at me and he goes, "What happened?" I go, "I just need the first aid kit." What happened? "I got bit in the hand." And he then proceeds to like start yelling at me and berating me that I'm an idiot. And I look at him like, dude, this was a self-correcting problem. Like literally, I get it. Don't put my hand where the dog's face is. Got it. Can you just help me bandage this up so I can go put the suit back on? Like there was no reason for that punishment. The dog had punished me enough. Twice, all I had to do was put my hands where they weren't supposed to be, getting bit and going, okay, don't put your hands there. All of that happened before I met John. Once I met John, like you know, I can't remember a time that I've gotten caught since, because he taught me where those thresholds are. He taught me where the dog is. He taught me how to defend myself. You know, anytime one of my students is standing out there to go work a dog and they have absolutely no equipment on and they have no sticks or whips or anything in their hand, they don't even have a tug in their back pocket. And I'm like, I stop. I go, "What are you doing?" They're like, "Well, I know this handler. It's Heather. The dog's safe." And I go, our famous line is, "You don't know that dog." "Well, okay, I know this dog." No. You're trusting us because we're professionals. Fuck that. You don't know this dog. Don't put yourself in a situation until you know that dog. If you're going to go and like spar with a new sparring partner, are you just going to go hog ham and just start fighting the person? Like, no. We're going to learn. We're going to flow. We're going to see how we can then spar with each other. Again, we'll work on moves and we'll work on more technique, but like, can we just first dance a little bit? I need to know where the dog is in relation to where I am, because that's what's going to get me bit. Now, if we're training dogs to bite and there's absolutely no chance that we're going to get bit for real, you're not actually training dogs to bite. Okay? So there is an element of danger that does come with training dogs to protect. We have to be aware of that, because if we're not playing with that level of danger, then we're doing Nerf bites and the dog's not actually going to protect anyone. You know, I had someone bring me a dog. The guy had sent the dog away for training. The guy was a long haul truck driver, and he had sent the dog away for protection training. The guy was on the road. The guy got jumped by 4 guys, and he called the dog out of the truck and told him to bite. And the dog basically ran around, like excited, barking, but like was running around looking for something. And he goes, he was looking for that big sleeve thing. So I go, okay. And the dog bit pretty well on something he knew he was allowed to bite. All I had to do was hidden, sleeve, civil work, and muzzle work. The next time the guy got jumped on the road, that dog bit, and he tore into them pretty good, you know? So the dog had foundation, but they hadn't finished it. They hadn't actually taught the dog that it's not about the sleeve. They taught the dog how to bite, but not how to bite without equipment. Now, to say that we can't use equipment, like we need equipment to be able to teach dogs how to bite. I can't just do civil work, because then the dog gets absolutely no satisfaction or no experience like actually on the grip. That's just like us arguing, and we just get really good at arguing. We don't actually learn how to box or actually learn how to fight, right? I would definitely say from John's experience in martial arts, he took that and put that towards his decoy work, because it's just, you know, puppy jitsu. That's all it is. Like, it's just martial arts of dog. Do boxers punch people with pads? Right? We don't bare knuckle box. Now, in real life, someone attacks you and that's what you got, your bare knuckles. You should use those bare knuckles, but in training, we're going to wear gloves and we're going to do all these things like, you know, bite suits. The bite suit matters, you know? I have one major regret, which is I had purchased one of John's old competition suits from Steve, and I used it for years. I have pictures of me using it when I was a certified decoy, and I would wear it. It was my trial suit. I don't know how it fit us. You know, we might have weighed the same amount, but he's 6'5", 6'6", and I'm 5'11", but it fit. And so it was a really thin, you know, like super thin competition suit. And when I retired from trial work, I regrettably sold it to a student for them to use. I've been searching back for that suit. I honestly can't even remember who I sold it to. I remember it was a student I was teaching someone. I was helping someone learn how to decoy. So if that suit is out there somewhere, it's black and yellow. I would like to purchase it back for the Suitsonian. I know John does have, Steve has one of his old suits, and I think John has one of his old suits, you know. So I do regret that, but I at least have, you know, I have happiness in the fact that I got to actually wear it in trial. You know, even though we didn't do the same sport, he did French ring. You know, both Waleed and John did French ring. I did PSA, but nonetheless, you know, getting to actually eventually achieve my goal of wanting to be a certified decoy, and then getting to actually work trials in John's suit, you know, that is nostalgia for me. So I can at least live with, you know, those happy memories. You know, you have to pay homage where homage is deserved. I constantly tell dog trainers, even if you have a huge falling out with your mentor, which I haven't, and I'm very lucky, it's very important to me to keep these relationships strong, you know, but even if you have a falling out, like, don't talk shit about your mentor, because you're literally then talking shit about your experience. Like, oh, they're a shitty trainer. Well, then you got shitty knowledge. Why'd you spend so much time with them? If I'm shit, why the fuck did you spend years with me?
Right.
Wouldn't you have fucking left after a few months and be like, this is shit? No. I was shit when you didn't need me anymore. I don't, thank God, I've gotten to the point in my career where I don't need my mentors anymore, other than for emotional support. I still enjoy that, but I needed them when I needed them. And that's what a mentor is there for you, is to help you when you need the help. Very few dog trainers are actually self-taught. Because like I said before, if you've watched videos on the internet and then mimicked anything anyone ever did, it's like how positive only training does not exist. It is a mythical creature because positive reinforcement goes hand in hand with negative punishment. So to say that you were self-taught has to mean that you don't even have the internet and you've never watched a video of anyone training a dog, because if you've ever mimicked anything anyone's ever done, you did learn from someone. I get it that some people want to, like, that's their claim to fame is, I did it on my own, but did you really do it on your own? How about this? I did a lot on my own. I did not do this on my own. I did a lot on my own. I did not do this on my own. I had people that mentored me and guided me, and I'm very thankful for that. I think it's important to give back. People need to know where this comes from. People need to know where the knowledge came from. Anytime I am teaching a technique that I was taught, why do I tell my students who my mentors are? Because I think it's important for them to learn where the knowledge came from. Give credit where credit is due. You know, years ago was the case of Ed Sheeran was being sued for using a riff chord, and he came to court with his guitar and he's like, I'm going to play the same chord, you know, over and over again with different songs. And it's like, that same chord's been used over and over and over again. It's adjusted a little bit, the pitch and tone, and there's different words to it, but nonetheless, it's always the same song. And he just kept playing different songs with that same, you know, same chord, whatever. I don't know anything about music. I like music, but I don't know how to read music. So, like, dog training has been around for thousands of years. You did not create anything. You might have created a technique. You know, the most that we can say, so like when I talk about my system, it's I put a bunch of techniques together. A lot of, you know, some of them created by me, some of them created by other people. It's all about just putting against, you know, how do you make a hit song is put a bunch of chords together with a bunch of words. And if it all works out and people like it, then it becomes popular, right? You know, success is measured. I was having a conversation with the students today, and we were talking about training pet dogs. And I go, the success of a pet dog trainer is that people call them and people continue to hire them. And you get recommended to, you know, friends of previous clients. But on the sports side, success is measured. You know, the accomplishments are physically there and you can see them because they come with little, you know, pieces of paper that say what you've done, right? You're being judged on a set of skills, you know, judged from a certain guideline and criteria by someone that's been deemed, you know, worthy of, you know. People come and they show under judges and they get mad, you know, oh, that judge sucks. And I'm like, well, why'd you show? You know, I had a handler earned a leg under me, you know, at one trial, and then I helped them get into another trial, and then they failed the first day at the second trial that I helped them get the spot for. And then, you know, one of my friends is coming out of the bathroom, hearing them talking to their friends, being like, oh, well, Katz doesn't know how to judge. And it's like, well, what about last weekend when you earned your first leg of your two? You know, like, you clearly liked what I did last weekend. You just trialed 2 weekends in a row, so your performance sucks because you didn't have the time to rebuild the hope. You only had 5 days in between. Maybe I don't suck at judging because it clearly, you didn't say that I sucked last weekend. You're saying that I suck now. But then the next day, when you earned your second leg of your two, we took a picture and you praised me, right? So, you know, I think when it comes to what is success and how do we measure success, every venue, every genre is going to have a different measurement. You know, how are you successful as a training decoy? Building dogs, helping people with their program, helping people, taking guidance. You know, if I ask you to help me teach something, or I ask you to do something of the way I want it taught, as long as you don't disagree with me, maybe it's a good experience to learn. Maybe it's not the way that you do it, but as long as you don't perceive it to be cruel or unfair, try it a different way. See the way that, like, I think anyone that's been doing this for a long enough period of time, they have a certain way that they like to do things. They have a way, there's a flow of how their brain feels about how to communicate and teach different things. And I think the skill of a decoy is to be able to mold and adjust. How can I take direction from this trainer? Or maybe I am the trainer and the handler takes direction from me. You got to be able to do all kinds. The captain gives orders, but when the colonel shows up, the captain looks at the colonel. Is this how these rankings go? I don't know. The captain looks at the colonel and goes, "Yes, sir. What do you need?" He's no longer in charge, right? Who's the most experienced person in the room? We're going to look to them for guidance, right? So again, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you, John, for everything you taught me. Every decoy that I've ever taught, anyone that I've ever helped, anyone that I've ever taken I've taken a bite from their dog. You guys can all thank John for everything that he has taught me. My goal is, again, he's not in dogs anymore, but my goal is to try to get him to come out and do a seminar. He would probably say, I've been out of it for a while. And I would say, you have forgotten more than the average person actually knows. So hopefully we could do this and get this done. Regardless, I'd just be honored for him to come and visit and see the school and see the campus and everything and get him in the studio and do an episode with him.
That'd be awesome.
Thank you, John. Appreciate you. If you guys enjoy the podcast, I'd really appreciate if you can go in and give us a like and a subscribe. This is all done on our own dime. We really enjoy doing the podcast. And so if you could just go and give us a like, give us a share, give us a comment, tell us topics you'd like for us to discuss. Tell us how the episode feels. Like I had a gentleman comment the other day on one of the episodes and they're like, I really needed this episode. You validated how I was feeling, and to hear you say how I was feeling, like, really helped me right now. For that person is the reason why we do the podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. See you guys next week. That was good.